Hello folks and welcome to App Screencast. Danny here and welcome to the last video in this series on the HTC Sensation XL. Now the folks at Free UK were kind enough to send this phone out to review, so thanks a lot to them. Now this phone doesn't have the highest resolution for its screen size compared to some other phones such as the Samsung Galaxy Nexus, but generally I've been really happy with the quality of the screen, the resolution, the viewing angles have been really good, the colours etc. very nice. Brightness, everything I wanted from a screen, I've been very happy with it. Now the iPhone has a higher resolution, but I wouldn't say I've really missed the high resolution on the iPhone, and I've been pretty satisfied with this screen in general. But because it's so large a screen, I have found it actually quite hard to use the device with one hand. If I'm holding the phone like I normally would want to at the bottom, I can't quite reach the top of the screen with my thumb. It's a little bit of a struggle and it's a bit uncomfortable. I obviously can use the device with two hands, not a problem. But because I can't use it one-handed, I can't navigate quite as well as I want. I'm feeling that maybe 4.7 inch is a little bit too big for me, and I would prefer something a little bit smaller. Maybe 4.3, 4.5 inch would be adequate and also give me a nice large screen. But in general, I haven't felt the phone's felt overly bulky, overly big. It's very slim, and in the pocket I haven't really noticed it's there. So generally I've been pretty happy with the size of this device, apart from that little issue in terms of using the device with one hand. Now in terms of hardware, I've obviously talked about this previously in my other videos, that the buttons haven't got a lot of travel in them, so it's quite hard to know if you're pressing them. It's an issue, it could be improved, but it's something you can live with, not a major deal breaker there. I've been happy with these capacitive buttons at the bottom, they've worked quite well. I would personally prefer physical buttons, but these capacitive buttons have been adequate, no major problems there again. Now, hardware, this phone, the build quality is brilliant, and it's got a dual core 1.5 GHz processor. I think if I were personally going out and buying a new smartphone at this sort of money, I'd be looking for a dual core processor in the phone personally, and I would possibly looking for a slightly higher resolution screen. Not because I found the screen to be bad in any way, as I've said already in the video, but I just would want to get the best sort of like phone for my money, just to have that little bit better in terms of resolution, in terms of power. But in terms of using this phone with its 1.5 GHz processor, I find it's been more than adequate running Android. Now, this phone's running an older version of Android, it's not running the latest version, which is quite another disappointment. If I were personally going out and getting an Android phone, I'd be looking at getting the latest OS on that phone. Now there's still phones coming to the market being released, new phones at the minute, and they're still running the older version of Android, so I would personally avoid them sort of phones and be looking at getting something with the latest OS on. That's just personally me. I just like to be up to date with my technology. Now I think most people probably won't find that an issue, maybe a lot of people won't even notice or even know it was running an older version, but personally for me, being a bit of a tech enthusiast, it's something what would like worry me a little bit. Now, battery performance on this device, I personally was finding I was getting a day out of the device in terms of charging. I would, just to be on the safe side, I would charge it at night, so then I know the next day I would have plenty of power and I wouldn't have to worry about the phone running out during the day. But generally I was finding I'm getting a whole day out of the device, which was really impressive. It obviously has got a big screen which could potentially use a lot of power, but because it's not quite the highest resolution screen you can get for 4.7 inch, maybe that's what's helping it not use as much power. So that could be a positive and not just obviously a negative. As I mentioned in my earlier videos, I've been pretty satisfied with the camera. I wouldn't say quite at the quality of the iPhone 4S and maybe even the iPhone, but it's an 8 megapixel camera and it does perform pretty decent. I was quite impressed because I've heard a lot of complaints about HTC cameras not being quite as good as a lot of other manufacturers, but I would say this phone was quite adequate and I think a lot of people would be more than happy with it. Now a complaint I do have about the hardware, when I was watching YouTube videos, some movie trailers, things like that over the week or so, I just found that this speaker at the back was quite tinny. It was loud enough, but it didn't sound the best quality and it was a little bit tinny and it was a little bit annoying. I could live with it, but it definitely was very noticeable, so that was a disappointment and I would have hoped for better. Now this phone does come with some really nice headphones. It's Beats by Dre headphones, in-ear headphones, and they are very good quality, a lot better than obviously what you would normally get with a phone, and that kind of makes up for this speaker on the back. But I personally don't use the headphones a great deal, so for me personally I'm a little bit disappointed more about the back speaker than anything. Now focusing on the Android OS, it's actually running HTC Sense skin on top, and in my personal opinion, HTC Sense is a lot of eye candy, it looks nice, and that's obviously an important thing, but for me it's not the most important thing. And I was thinking, what kind of functionality does HTC Sense give you? And I personally don't think it gives a great deal. It looks nice, but what does it offer over a normal Android device? Not a great deal. Obviously, I know that HTC and even Samsung are trying to make their devices stand out in the market, make them look different, so I can understand why they want to put these skins on top. But from me, just looking at it as what does it give you, I don't personally think it gives you a great deal, apart from a little bit of eye candy. Now, you do get some extra widgets on this phone, HTC widgets, and some of them widgets are nice and quite useful, and a little bit better than the stock Android widgets. So I guess that's a positive towards HTC Sense. In my last videos I talked about the lock screen and using the ring to unlock, which is great, and quick access to your apps, like quick launch your apps like that camera app is really cool. So there is some functionality there with HTC Sense, but not a massive amount in my opinion. Now in terms of applications on the Android device, I've got to say that they've got plenty of apps in the App Store. There's just thousands of applications there. Paid apps and free apps, so in terms of apps, there's an app for everything really. Now my final thoughts on Android. Now it's a very capable OS, and generally you can do everything you would expect from a smartphone, but personally I find it a less enjoyable experience than using my iPhone. To be honest, coming towards the end of the last week, I was really looking forward to obviously getting back to using my iPhone, just because I just generally prefer the overall experience on the iPhone. I do feel this device is not quite as elegant in terms of its design, or the OS I should say, is not quite as elegant as iOS, and it's not quite as easy to use. Anyone who's looking to buy an Android device, you might be looking at this phone, and what I would say to you is, I personally would say, probably not look at this phone, and I'd recommend looking at something like the Samsung Galaxy Nexus phone. I think it's going to give you a lot more for the money. It's not it's not much more expensive than this, and if you have a look on contract, you probably can get it for the same price as this phone. So I would definitely recommend looking at that. Also, I say I've looked at HTC One X. It's very similar to this phone in terms of a large screen, but it has a much better camera and it's a much better spec phone. It has quad core, and on contract you might be able to get a similar sort of deal as you would on this phone. If you're perhaps thinking same as me that maybe 4.7 inch is a little bit too big and you would like something a little bit smaller, then definitely check something out like the HTC One S, or maybe wait on for the new Samsung Galaxy S3 which is coming out, which may have a 4.3 inch screen possibly, who knows. Now if this is a phone you think you like the hardware, you're thinking you like the design of it, it interests you, you think it could be a good device, maybe you're getting a good deal on it maybe, then yes, I definitely would say this phone is a good phone, and I think most people would be satisfied with it. Especially if you're into Android devices, then definitely this could be a good phone for you. So hopefully you found this video helpful everyone, and hopefully you'll like this series. So thanks for watching everyone, I'll see you in the next videos. See you later.